Before we begin, I just want to say that if you would like to hear my full opinion on the topics discussed in this commentary, I would recommend my Medium articles, The Gay 2 Minutes of Hate, and The Twitter Identity Police. Tonight's commentary is on a person by the name of Crying Blossom, who did a video on Mushroom Girl's video on the topic of bi lesbians. And, as you can guess, I thought it was not very good. Now, before we get into the video itself, I want to address one counter-argument that I know I'm going to hear, and that Crying Blossom even used against Mushroom Girl, and that's the fact that I'm not a lesbian, and neither is she, so why should we even be involved with this conversation? It should be up to lesbians to decide which identities are valid.
From your own mouth, you're bisexual. So why are you discussing this and deciding what is and isn't harmful to us lesbians? It's not your place to decide if it is or isn't.
This is something she later repeats during her final thoughts.
Mushroom Girl is not a lesbian. They are a bi individual, and so they should not be talking about lesbian issues when they have no idea what we face and what we feel.
This argument is stupid for a couple of reasons. The first one being, what the hell does it mean to let them decide? Is there some meeting place where lesbians determine what identities are and aren't valid in this context? And if so, I just want to say that I hope they're safer than the average lesbian bar.
Wait a minute. There's something bothering me about this place. I know! This lesbian bar doesn't have a fire exit! Enjoy your death trap, ladies!
2. Even if that argument did make sense, how was MG trying to decide for them? She was just stating her opinion. I'm just responding to arguments. 3. I find it very funny that somebody who begins the video by saying they're a non-binary lesbian,
and it's grossly spreading misinformation, that I had to say something as a non-binary lesbian individual.
Given there are lesbians who have decided that identity is invalid. Ariel Scarcella, for example.
How can you both be non-binary, meaning neither binary gender, neither a man or a woman, that's how you identify, but then claim the word lesbian as a sexual orientation when a lesbian means a woman that is attracted to other women?
Even going so far as to call the label itself fundamentally disrespectful.
No, how could you be both non-binary, meaning not a woman or a man, neither binary gender, and then claim the word lesbian as a sexual orientation when the word literally means women attracted to other women? To all the lesbians watching this right now, I want to ask you something. Doesn't it piss you off when cisgender straight guys claim to be lesbians? If you're at a bar or something and you tell somebody, you know, the guy hits on you and you're like, you know, I'm a lesbian, and he says, oh yeah, I'm a lesbian too. And you're like, bro, like you're not though. Why aren't we getting upset when non-binary people are now claiming that same label? Like, wouldn't it be disrespectful to say that non-binary people can be lesbians? Because wouldn't that be misgendering them?
Boy, doesn't that remind you of somebody.
Yeah, it is pretty harmful considering the fact that it misuses the label lesbian when those who use it aren't lesbians.
Actually, while on the topic of this Scarcella video, at one point, Crying Blossom says that the identity of non-binary lesbian must be valid because when she told her friends she was one, they didn't take issue with that.
I literally came out as a lesbian.
As opposed to metaphorically coming out as a lesbian. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Not too long ago, and everybody knew I was non-binary, and I was accepted perfectly fine.
Which, first off, can we talk about the implication that validity of identities is accepted by majority rule? Because if that is what you believe, then what the fuck? Most Americans don't actually believe that you can have a different gender identity than the one that would correspond to whatever sex you were assigned at birth. That doesn't make the identity of transgender and non-binary people any less valid because their validity is not determined by vote. But I mention this because the video that Abigail Scarcella was responding to in the video of hers I played a clip from was one from Pink News where non-binary lesbians talk about their experience, and that includes being invalidated by other lesbians.
So can you be non-binary and lesbian? This is something I often get asked because when you identify as non-binary, you're saying that you're not female. And if you're not female and you're attracted to women, does that make you a lesbian? So my personal experience with the lesbian community since coming out as non-binary has been rather dismal. A lot of lesbians that I've encountered, especially on dates, haven't accepted my identity as something that they are interested in dating or accepting, to the point where some women have wanted me to use my birth name, which I feel very uncomfortable to use, because they want me to be more of a woman rather than someone who identifies in the middle. So they're almost bullying me out of my own identity, which is quite frustrating.
I have had people say that you can't be both non-binary and a lesbian, but I do think that comes from a flawed understanding of what lesbianism as an identity means, both now and historically.
But I'm still expected to kind of explain that even in the context of a dating app, which is obviously I'm not going on there thinking who can I next educate about what a non-binary lesbian is. Like, I'm there to, you know, I'm there to socialise, to find people to go on dates with, to connect with people, and so that's actually quite tiring that I have to kind of explain this all the time.
My apologies for going on a bit of a tangent, but this is one of the most fractally wrong people I have ever encountered, and I don't know how else to express that other than just pointing out all of the infinite ways they're incorrect. Now, I think she's wrong to think that, and would defend your identity against those who are trying to argue it's invalid. However, the point that some people do think yours is invalid, including the people you want to blindly sign off this role of determining who can and can't identify a certain way to, still stands. 4. The argument we're having is over who can and can't identify as a lesbian. Meaning, even if I accepted the notion that only lesbians can have opinions on issues like this, that still wouldn't make any sense, because first we have to determine who is a lesbian to determine who can have an opinion on this. And 5th, and this one is specifically to Crying Blossom, are you really expecting me to believe that if Mushroom Girl was a lesbian, you wouldn't have issues with what she says in the video? For that matter, are you really expecting me to believe that if she were to have repeated your opinion despite being a bisexual woman, you would have issue? Of course not, because your issue is with the opinion itself, not the identity of those who have it. But let's actually get into the video and examine the arguments Crying Blossom makes.
He poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, and delivered a plague unto our houses! He did? No, but are we just gonna wait around until he does?
I have a cold. Oh my god, I hate everything. Hello, Tazai. This video is about bi-lesbians, if you couldn't tell. It's basically me talking about why everyone needs to shut the fuck up. So, I have a very different opinion, a very weirdly unpopular opinion on bi-lesbians. Bi-lesbians are valid. Yeah. Now, I think that this is just a little silly. I think that this whole discourse is a little silly, seeing as bi-lesbians, like, first of all, when have you ever seen anyone that identifies as a bi-lesbian? Like, I'm just gonna say it, bi-lesbians are not a common thing. They're not something that's, like, coming in the LGBT community rapidly, but, like, no, I've never met a bi-lesbian. I've never met a bi-lesbian. I've met people who are similar and have similar identities to being a bi-lesbian, but, I've never met a bi-lesbian or a pan-lesbian. So I don't know I don't even know what started this discourse, but I guess some people decided that that's how they wanted to identify, and people got mad at that, which I understand, but I think that this whole discourse is fucking stupid.
You're right, because you'd rarely see someone go by such a false label. The label is definitely misleading, and I want to make it known that the concept and whole surrounding of this sexual concept is valid, as sexuality is a large spectrum. However, the label that is used for this is the issue, and we'll expand more on this later.
Okay, so at the beginning of the video, in a part I cut out, Crying Blossom said that she was going to cut out anything unnecessary and speed up Mushroom Girl's segments for time.
One more thing to note here is that I will be speeding up the original video and or cutting out unnecessary pieces from the video, so we can get straight to the point, as Mushroom Girl doesn't usually script their videos.
I mentioned this because, do you know how long that clip of Mushroom Girl talking went on for? 1 minute and 23 seconds. And her point basically came down to the label of bi-lesbian being invalid and inappropriate, something I could already determine she believed, if only because that's literally the title of the video. It gets worse, by the way. There's one part in the video where Crying Blossom plays a clip of MG without any commentary, for almost 7 minutes. This is fucking Sylvanian. In case you're curious, the interjection she made afterwards is slightly more than 1 minute. Actually, I went through the entire video and cut out all the clips of Mushroom Girl, so it was just Crying Blossom's interjections. And the end result was learning the actual fucking commentary from this commentary was not even 7 minutes of a 21-minute video. This is inexcusable. If you remove the opening and closing thoughts, it becomes less than 4. In case you don't quite get just how little that is, I crunched the numbers, and Crying Blossom's commentary makes up 29% of the video. If you remove her opening and closing thoughts and only make it interjections, that drops to 17%, less than a fifth. Wow! Just fucking wow! I'm honest to God not sure if I can call this the worst commentary of 2022, if only because I'm not fully convinced it counts as a commentary. I will say, you could not make a commentary worse than this, even if you put effort into doing so, just because then by doing so, you'd actually be putting effort into what you make. I know, I'm talking about this like it's one of the worst commentaries I've ever seen. Because it fucking is! If you aren't even going to spend a third of your commentary actually, commentating, then what the fuck is the point in making a commentary in the first place? And by the way, even if all of the points in this video were great, this would still be fucking-excusable. However, the points are also terrible. Remember that 7-minute clip I mentioned earlier? In it, Mushroom Girl, in an admittedly drawn-out and rambling way, basically pulls up the definition of lesbian and points out that it's hypocritical to be fine with, say, non-binary lesbians, but not be fine with bi-lesbians. Here is how Crying Blossom responds.
No.
No, 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 no!
You can't compare us non-binary lesbians or he/him lesbians because that's talking about pronouns and gender identity, not sexuality.
Okay, why are those things inherently incomparable? You're right, those are different things, but again, that doesn't mean you can't compare them when the situation calls for it.
Pronouns do not equal to someone's gender,
which Mushroom Girl specifically acknowledged in that long-ass clip you just played.
If you don't know, to explain he/him lesbians, because people may be confused because, oh, you can't be a man and be a lesbian. Some people go by he/him but aren't men. Mostly non-binary lesbians. Some will go by he/him or he/they or whatever, and they will not be men. They just identify with those pronouns.
And non-binary people are those who identify as not having a gender.
No, it's just a person with a gender identity that isn't man or woman. They have a gender outside of the binary, hence the term. What you're talking about, somebody without a gender identity, would more likely just be agender, which is one non-binary identity, true, but that's by no means all of them.
And they've always been accepted. Now you're just spreading false information and comparing two different concepts while saying they've never been accepted when they have.
What the fuck are you talking about? She never said that those two things had never been accepted. What she was saying was that it was hypocritical to accept one but not the other.
Before I actually get onto the argument, I do want to say the reason why I'm bringing up non-binary lesbians, he/him lesbians, etc. The reason why I'm bringing these people up is because the majority of the people, most of the people, like 99% of the people who are arguing against bi-lesbians argue for non-binary lesbians. And that's why I'm bringing it up. Because these people are being contradictory. And I'll explain why they're being contradictory in just a second.
I literally came out as a lesbian not too long ago, and everybody knew I was non-binary, and I was accepted perfectly fine. Then you bring up the first definition you see about lesbians, and twist it as if it's always meant strictly full female individuals loving full female individuals. Everybody knows it's more inclusive than that. The definition you pulled is just some quick and easy understanding of it.
Okay, so what's the full inclusive definition then? You say Mushroom Girl's definition definition is overly simplified, well, then give us the complicated one.
The part where you bring in the difference of sexual attraction and romantic attraction is to also fit in asexuals and aromantics.
Yeah, and Mushroom Girl's point is that if you want to be inclusive to those groups, you also have to be inclusive to bi lesbians. You can either be fully inclusive or you can't. Are those things just different? Well, if so, why don't you explain why exactly? And, this is what really gets me about this video, because she began by saying that she wanted Mushroom Girl to learn from this, and I assume she also wanted her audience to do the same.
Now, I want to preface that I do not want people attacking this user. In fact, I want people to learn from this from an actual person who is a part of the group being talked about here.
But you haven't actually taught your viewers anything. Most of your video is just replaying Mushroom Girl's video sped up with the occasional interjection that can usually just be summed up with nah-eh. These aren't even arguments. They're just you saying, no, that's wrong, without any kind of explanation as to why. You occasionally get halfway there and present us the basic premise of an argument, but you never actually follow up on it in any way that would actually teach the audience anything. Anyway, I'm going to end it here, and to be honest with you all, I would give final thoughts, but I really don't have any I haven't already said. Like, I could make some quip about this video misusing the label of commentary or something. However, I don't even feel like even that would be redundant because, well, I've already made that point several times over. Regardless of your opinion on the topic being discussed, the video just simply doesn't argue it very well. And most of it is spent playing somebody else's video and not arguing it, or interjecting and not actually arguing anything. In fact, it's at some points literally just making excuses not to argue. Good night, and good luck.